I'm sure many people have heard of the topic or the concept of gender performativity by Judith Butler, and this idea that we don't have any kind of essential gender or identity. We perform it, and by performing it, we construct it. That comes from Gender Trouble, Judith Butler's book on the topic, and she acknowledges in that work that she derives this from Nietzsche's genealogy of morals, and she also, to her credit, acknowledges that her extrapolation from this would not be something that Nietzsche would agree with. So I'm just going to read the part that she develops this theory from and talk about how that relates to Schopenhauer. So she says here, Nietzsche says here, but no such substratum exists, talking about below the action, below the existence. There is no being behind doing, acting, becoming. The doer is merely a fiction imposed on the doing. The doing itself is everything. So based on that, Judith Butler says, see, yes, it's our performativity. That's where we become male or female, on and on from there. However, she ignores that previous to this, just further up in the paragraph, Nietzsche says to demand of strength, and this would be the essence, the strength, that it should not express itself as strength. It almost sounds like gender expression. That it should not be a will to overcome, overthrow, dominate, a thirst for enemies and resistance and triumph makes as little sense as to demand of weakness that it should express itself as strength. So even though he's not directly saying this, I think Nietzsche is implying that there is this essence and we see this expression of it, but it's the same thing. And that would concord with what Schopenhauer says, and I'm going to give you two different books from this. So one here is The Two Fundamental Problems of Ethics, which I think is probably the best place to begin with Schopenhauer, because he wrote these essays anonymously, so he doesn't refer to his other works like he does in all of his other books. But in this, he says, our deeds are simply no first beginning, for in them nothing actually new attains existence. No new knowledge. Rather, through that which we do, we simply experience what we are. And this should sound familiar if you know Nietzsche. One of his famous quotes are, become what you are, right? So again, through that which we do, we simply experience what we are, because our essence, our being is just a objectification of that essence. And developing this a little bit more in book 4, which is on the ethics in this work, Schopenhauer says, the will is first and original, knowledge is merely added to it as an instrument belonging to the phenomenon of the will. Therefore, every man is what he is through his will, and his character is original, for willing is the basis of his inner being. Through the knowledge added to it, he gets to know in the course of experience what he is. In other words, he becomes acquainted with his character. Therefore, he knows himself in consequence of and in accordance with the nature of his will, instead of willing in consequence of and according to his knowing, as in the old view. And the old view he mentions here is, he talks about Descartes and Spinoza having this concept that, man learns what is good through experience and then tries to, get more of that. But Schopenhauer is saying, no, what is good is just good in relation to the will. And as you go through life, you're learning more about what you are, what your will wants. So again, this sounds very much like what Nietzsche was saying in that quote. Again, I think they're in agreement here. And further, he's saying that this is the process of we're discovering our essence through our existence, which again would be refuting existentialism. Going on a little further, though, he says, according to this view, We need only consider how he would best like to be, and he would be so. This is the freedom of the will. Again, this is the old view that he's disagreeing with. It therefore consists in man's being his own work in light of knowledge. You creating your own work, your own what you are, creating what you are. I, on the other hand, say that he is his own work prior to all knowledge, and knowledge is merely added to illuminate it. So we are our own work already, and we're discovering it through the process. Therefore, he cannot decide to be this or that. Also, he cannot become another person. Okay, this is a direct shot at Butler, even though obviously this precedes her. But he is once for all, and subsequently knows what he is. With those other thinkers, he wills what he knows. With me, he knows what he wills. So, to me, it's clear that Nietzsche was grappling with these ideas with Schopenhauer in this book, and then later we see that with Butler, but again, without the understanding of the context, or at least without bringing that into the discussion. And again, I'm calling that academy capture of philosophy or professional deformation. It is a problem, so we should try to correct it. And that's what I'm trying to do with this video. Thank you for listening.